As they settled into the waiting room, the real truth about each person began to surface, not through formal interviews, but through casual conversation. The two candidates quickly shifted into bragging mode, listing their achievements, their degrees, the places they had traveled, and the titles they believed made them superior. Their words carried an unspoken message. They saw themselves as destined for greatness and viewed anyone outside their circle as unworthy. Gustavo, meanwhile, stayed quiet, not out of insecurity but out of humility. He listened, he smiled politely, and he never once tried to compare himself to them. Even when they threw subtle insults his way, questioning whether a simple janitor belonged in a managerial competition, he remained calm and respectful. It was in these small, unguarded moments that character revealed itself, because how you treat people when no one is watching often says more than any qualification ever will. When the candidates first walked through the doors, none of them knew that the evaluation had already begun. They believed the test would take place in the meeting room, but life often measures us long before we realize it. The moment the elderly man dropped his money, each reaction revealed something deeper than a resume ever could. Two of them looked away, bothered by the inconvenience, irritated by the presence of someone they felt was beneath them. But Gustavo didn't hesitate. He stepped forward with quiet sincerity, picked up the money, and even added some of his own so the man could buy medicine. It wasn't about showing off, it was instinct, the natural response of someone who carries kindness in his everyday actions. While others judged the old man as a distraction, Gustavo saw a human being who needed help, and that simple moment changed everything, even if no one realized it at the time. When the boss finally announced Gustavo as the new manager, the room fell into a stunned silence. The two candidates who had spent the entire day flaunting their achievements suddenly found themselves face to face with the consequences of their behavior. But what happened next revealed why Gustavo truly deserved the role. Instead of celebrating or looking down on them, he immediately turned to the boss and asked that they not be removed from their positions. He understood that everyone makes mistakes, and he recognized that losing their jobs would hurt their families more than it would teach them a lesson. His compassion didn't disappear the moment he gained authority. In fact, it grew stronger. Leadership wasn't about proving he was better than them, it was about lifting others even when they hadn't done the same for him. And in that moment, Gustavo showed that true power belongs to those who use it with kindness. When the interviewer finally revealed the truth, the entire atmosphere in the room shifted. None of the candidates had realized that their evaluation began long before they ever sat at the table. Every moment they thought was casual had actually been intentional. The elderly man who dropped his money wasn't just a stranger, he was part of the test. The staff member who welcomed them wasn't just an employee, he was observing their behavior. Even the poor man who walked in hungry was placed there to see who would treat him with dignity. Piece by piece, the boss explained how each scenario exposed their values more clearly than any resume could. And as the truth unfolded, it became obvious that only one person had acted with consistency, compassion, and sincerity. Gustavo hadn't been performing, he had simply been himself, and that was enough to set him apart. When the interviewer finally stepped in and announced there would be just one question, the room grew tense. It seemed almost too simple. Do you consider yourself a good person? Yet that single question carried more weight than any academic test or professional challenge they had prepared for. The first two candidates rushed to present polished versions of themselves, proudly listing their virtues, their clean records, their routines, even their religious habits, as if goodness were something that could be proven through achievements. But when it was Gustavo's turn, he didn't try to decorate his answer. He admitted that he wasn't perfect, that he had made mistakes in the past, and that his life hadn't been filled with privilege or ease. What made his response different was the sincerity behind it, his willingness to acknowledge his faults and his effort to grow beyond them. Sometimes, honesty about who you really are is the strongest proof of character. When the poor, hungry man entered the room, everything shifted for a moment. His clothes were worn, his face tired, and his steps unsteady, yet what truly exposed the candidates' hearts was how they chose to see him. The first two recoiled instantly, whispering about germs and danger, treating him as if his presence was an insult. Their discomfort came not from fear, but from the belief that he didn't belong near people like them. But Gustavo didn't see a threat, he saw a human being who clearly hadn't eaten in a long time. Without hesitation, he slid his plate toward the man and told him to take half. To him, it wasn't a grand gesture, it was simply the right thing to do. And in that moment, without saying a single word, Gustavo demonstrated a kindness far more meaningful than any title or accomplishment could ever offer.